Good evening. Welcome to another episode of What's Your Story? Tonight we are sitting down with Valerie Reid, one of our local favorites. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for asking me.
So you are sort of a new friend to Graves Library, for me anyway.
Yes.
Because of our Portside Readers, the Readers Theater. So I was thinking, we really want to know more about you. So that's why you're sitting in the hot seat tonight. So, and we usually start our session off by asking our guest where you grew up, where you went to school.
I grew up in Clarendon Hills, Illinois. It's a little darling suburb about 20 miles west of Chicago. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people who know the area don't know it because it's a little like Kennebunkport and Kennebunk or Cape Porpoise. But I went to Hinsdale High School, was born in Hinsdale Hospital, and some of the other towns that might be well known would be like Downers Grove and Oak Brook and someplace like that. So that's where I grew up, in one house my whole life until I left to go to college.
Wow. And where did you go to?
I started my freshman year. I went to the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, and did great, but I wasn't real happy about being there. And I took some time off, and I worked in Chicago in an advertising agency until I decided where did I really want to go. And where I went was the University of Minnesota to finish my undergraduate work in Minneapolis.
Go Gophers.
Yes, and it was such the right choice. And I had never even thought of that. I had thought about, maybe I could go to Smith or Mount Holyoke or something like that. But no, I went to the University of Minnesota and loved it.
And it's freezing cold there in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
So
and I adored it because when I arrived during mid-year, and so I moved into my first apartment of my life when I was 20, and it was like 30 below zero. Mm-hmm. And every day I'd walk to school and I'd listen to the radio, and the radio would be saying, it's, 30 below, and the high of today will be 14 below. And somehow we stayed warm.
Below.
Yep. Somehow we stayed warm. And I loved the snow. I loved it all.
Well, and in the spring and summer too, you've got the beautiful lake. The water is there, and so it's sort of like not being here, but it's a different kind of here. So.
Right. I always felt like if I had the ocean, was there, it would be more of a draw to stay.
Yeah. So, what did you study in school?
I did a double major of elementary education and theater.
Okay.
And what I really loved was the fact that at the University of Minnesota you could really design your own major, and it was really freeing, and I felt like I came out of it really equipped both to teach elementary school and to do theater, which is what I ended up doing.
Yeah. And where did you do that?
Well, I moved here right after I graduated in 1976.
Okay.
I did not know anybody in Maine, so I came here, and it's mostly because of an image that I had of Maine and New England, and I drove in and looking for a job. I didn't want to go back to Chicago, and I ended up, first at Park Street School. I was the Park Street School librarian because I came in August and they didn't have any teaching jobs. Yeah. But they said, if you get your foot in the door. So I started as the Park Street librarian, and I also drove the roving reader bus, which some people might remember. I had never even driven a Volkswagen. I didn't drive stick, and they taught me on a school bus. And then I drove this enormous bookmobile, which you can find pictures of in the Annals of History. But anyway, and then I got my second grade teaching job at Consolidated School, which was my dream job. And I only did that for a few years because by then I had gotten married and I had two little boys really close together. And I took time off and started doing a lot of theater in town. And I did acting and improv myself, but I also did a lot of children's theater, doing plays, which is what I wanted to do, was do plays with children.
Yeah, what a win-win.
Yeah, so I have done an awful lot of that in my life.
So at Consolidated School or?
Well, technically, yes, but not through the school.
Okay.
The rec department in those days
Yeah.
had a grant for children's musical theater, and every summer there was a program, and I directed it for, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
And then what happened was, when I was ready, then I had a daughter, and when my little children were all in school and my youngest was going into first grade, I thought it's time for me to go back to the school district. But I didn't go back to elementary. They had a theater job available at the high school. It was only part-time, but they hired me for that, and that became my 20-year career, was the high school theater teacher.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and I directed 40 plays at Kennebunk High School before it was all said and done.
You have a favorite?
Oh, that's really hard. I was
I
actually
know.
thinking about that. One of the plays, because think of it, it's like 40 plays and so
Yeah.
many talented kids. But one that leaps to mind was The Importance of Being Earnest, because it's a small cast and a superb script, and I had great actors, and I had so much control because it was a small cast, and they were terrific. And so I feel like that might be one of my most flawless productions.
Okay.
But I also did, twice I did Our Town, but the one that was maybe in 2004, 2005, around there, that to me was fabulous. And I also did The Crucible, which is a big cast, but the kids that I had, the actors, especially the main characters who have to play those tragic characters, did such a beautiful job. So those are ones that stand out.
So speaking of standing out, do you have students that come back to you, get in touch with you and say, thank you so much, I went on to...
I do. In fact, some people may realize that one of our local kids, Chris Charles, who's, a man now, there was a lot of buzz last year because he co-wrote a movie which is called The Marksman, and it has Liam Neeson in it.
Wow.
And so that, was in theaters everywhere, and they were interviewing. I mean, Chris was interviewed by a lot of the local papers, and then on 207 they did a program with him.
Yeah.
And so that was very exciting, and it was also very exciting because he very sweetly singled me out and with a couple of other teachers.
Yeah.
And just gave his thanks for our direction and encouragement. So that was very nice. And just recently I found out that a former student, Will Von Vogt, I just sort of serendipitously found that he had a major leading role at the Geffen Playhouse in Los Angeles. And I think it might have been a year or so ago, but I only read it this week. And the LA Times reviewed it and him superbly, and they called him magnificent. And so that's Will Von Vogt out there doing theater at the Geffen Playhouse, where in the play that they now have, Bryan Cranston's in it. So they've got some big names.
Yeah.
And Will, I can just see him being excellent in this role. It was, I will say, it's called Significant Other. And it just finished at Portland Stage Company. No. Good Theater, not
Good
Portland
theater,
Stage.
yeah.
Good Theater, yeah.
Wow. So I think, there's a lot of high school students that go through thinking that, I could never get on a stage. I could never be in a play. I don't sing. What do you say to them?
First of all, people who think they can't sing are often really wrong. And that has happened in the past when I've had kids that are actors, and I'll say, why don't you try out for the musical? And they'll say, but I don't sing. And then they try out and they end up with leading roles because it turns out they do sing. They just don't realize it.
Yeah.
And, usually the kids who are drawn to theater will try out for theater, but because I was a teacher of theater and we had a full-fledged, full-time theater department with electives and everything, I got an opportunity to meet some students that maybe wouldn't have, but I could see that they should try out.
They had a little fire in there somewhere.
Yes.
Yep.
And so that is something where I would probably personally say, I'm directing a play coming up. There's auditions. I really think maybe you might find a role. I mean, I can't really say that because I can't promise that, but I would encourage them to audition.
Oh, that's great. I was working on a puzzle the other day in my dining room, and I was listening. I think a song from Fiddler on the Roof came on, and my husband's in the kitchen, and he says, "How do you know that?" I was in the chorus when I was a freshman in high school, and all those songs, like, because the chorus, you were always like standing by waiting for, the whole, a certain act to go through, but you put it back there. You learned them. You didn't think you learned them, but you did.
Yes.
And so any kind of song that comes up, and I love musicals, but I got thinking about that, like, what a great time in my life that was, being part of a production like that.
Oh, yes.
Because people like you put your heart and soul into having everybody show up, and you have to encourage that. And then maybe they aren't quite doing what you hope, but it's their expression. So you're working with, all of those things. But for those of us that were way back in the chorus, we thank you too for for being there for us, because it was a great part of just, even though it was a high school production, it was a high school production.
Yes.
It was really cool.
Oh, yes.
And so for the 40 that you did, I mean, that's pretty amazing. So,
it was high school musical theater and chorus and choir that basically got me through high school. And I don't mean, I struggled not necessarily academically, but sort of emotionally. I didn't enjoy it. I really didn't like high school. That's why it's amazing I turned into a high school teacher.
But those moments, things like that.
I had choir every morning, first thing, and boy, that was a great way to start the day. And so I could get through the whole day just starting with that. And musicals too. I sang in the chorus until I was a senior, and then had a semi-leading role. But I always think today, if I had gone into theater exclusively instead of teaching, I would have been happy just to be in the chorus of Broadway musicals. I wouldn't have, it wouldn't have mattered to me whether I was a lead or anything. I just love to be part of that group of singing people on the stage, with the audience and the lights. And
so have you been in plays off, not as far as around here?
Yes, I have. It's been a long time ago now, because when I was teaching, I was so busy. But the last play that I did, I played Maria in The Sound of Music. Oh, and this was up in Portland in a church, a perfect church, and Sea Glass, Gene Strasdis was directing. And
the Sea Glass Choral?
Yes,
or
but
is that
it was
something different?
That's the same one.
Oh, okay.
And it was the full-fledged, because she was directing. That was a period of time where she was doing a lot of directing of summer shows, and like over at Thornton Academy, I remember that she did Into the Woods, and she did different musicals. Carousel I was in, that she directed at Kennebunk High School in the summer.
Yeah.
And so I played Maria in The Sound of Music. And what's funny is I was 46 at the time, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so old to be playing Maria. This is nuts. And then I looked it up, and Mary Martin was was 40. Was it Mary Martin? Yes, Mary Martin was 46 when she was on Broadway doing The Sound of Music.
Wow.
Yeah. So I said, well, I guess I can do it.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah. But I loved being in musicals too.
Yeah, so much fun. So I've been talking with our producer Mike Kelly here, we have a movie night, monthly movie night here at the library. So back in 2019, so we need to get those going again.
Yeah.
But we were talking about possibly including, besides the movie night, including like every once in a great while, doing a quarterly pop-up on like a Saturday afternoon and showing a musical.
Oh, what fun.
So maybe you could come and like talk to the crowd a little bit, get us all warmed up, and then we'd show it.
Yes.
And I thought, most of us are watching things on closed caption now because I can't do it any other way. Especially when I'm watching like a British show or Irish show. So I thought, this is perfect because then we can all sing along if we want to.
Oh, that would be really fun. That's true.
So what do you think, Mike? You think we should do something like that? Yeah, I think we
Thumbs up.
should. So you mentioned 3 children.
Yes.
So where are they? Are they around at all?
Well, my oldest is really around. My oldest lives 3 houses away from me, which is really great because he's the one with the grandchildren.
Oh, how
so
nice.
That's Brooks and Bowden. Our Brooks is 10 and Bowden is 7, and Brooks goes to C Road and Bowden goes to KES. So he's nearby, and my son Matthew also, because my kids grew up here, but my son Matthew owns New England Eco Adventures, which is, he has these touring boats. Well, you can go out and do a whale watch, or you can have a thrill ride. They're wonderful. If anybody's seen, there's like a yellow, almost like a pontoon boat in the river, and he just recently bought my husband Bob Danzelo is Captain Bob of the Ragosa, and he has just transferred or sold his business to my son. So we've got a lot of boats in the family and a lot of boating going on. So that's Matthew. And my son Lance lives in Salt Lake City, and my daughter Laura lives in Stamford, Connecticut. So they're all kind of... Lance is the farthest, but my brother and sister live out in Reno, so sometimes I get out to that part of the country.
Must have been a little hard the last couple of years getting together with...
Yes.
It's nice to see someone's face on a computer, but definitely not the same as being being in person. So, so now, does your husband, is he also a musician?
He is.
Is that right?
He is. He's a singer-songwriter.
Yeah.
And guitarist, and... he's, if I do say so myself, he's wonderful. He is great. His music is terrific, and his voice is great, and his guitar playing, even though he wouldn't say all these things, but he's terrific, And he has spent a lot of time when he was younger actually doing that for a living.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. Does he perform anywhere around?
He hasn't lately. When we first moved back here, because we left for a little while. But when we first moved back, he cut an album, and he was doing a lot of playing out. But his time with running Ragosa, owning and running this lobster touring boat, has kind of kept him from doing music. But maybe, I think he'll probably start getting back into it.
Good for him. Well, we have a summer music series that we started last year, and out in our garden area. And so, and it's a BYOC, bring your own chair. We provide the beverages, and and people last summer really enjoyed it. We got rained out a few times, but it was just something fun to do on a Wednesday night or a Thursday night for an hour, just to kick back, and people brought their supper or just some snacks. They met their friends here, and so maybe we could call him up.
Yes, he'd probably have a little bit more free time this summer, and I think that would be wonderful because the audience would love it. I did read about that and never made it to one, but
a lot of them got rained out. So we're actually this year here's the night, but here's the rain date. So we have a guarantee on something, unless the whole summer goes blammy. But it's not going to.
No. No, but I'll mention that to him because that would be a great opportunity for him to play.
Be really fun.
Enjoy.
So you were here in 2 capacities. So as our guest tonight, but also as a performer, reader in our Portside Readers. Can you talk a little bit about that and
Sure.
how that came to be?
Well, Steve Price, according to my understanding, he was the brainchild of this, but it may have been with you, maybe the two of you working on this together. And I think he just thought of me as a former theater teacher because I am retired. And so he called and said, "What do you think of this?" And I said, "Oh, I think this would be wonderful." And I had some people that I knew, like Karen Stathopoulos, who is a dear friend of mine and who's done a lot of performing. And then, he had called a few people, and we sort of pulled things together, and now it's been up and running, and
It's wonderful. It's wonderful to offer that, and you each do a segment every Wednesday night at 7 on Facebook, YouTube, and on our local 1301 channel. How do you pick your pieces?
Gosh, that's a really good question. That's a great question. It's funny because I'm not sure how everybody else does it, but I think we have our favorite short stories, because I talk to Karen a lot. We'll say, "So what are you going to read this time?" And we have I think we all have some favorite authors, favorite short stories, but then when we go to read the short story, we realize, well, at least for me, I either realize they're way too long or they might be a little too heavy. The one I read today is the first really truly heavy one, based on a real story that happened in Alabama, a tornado. But sometimes, we think, "Oh, well, I think we need a little levity, so let's get some humor." But Karen, for instance, she has like James Thurber, who is a favorite of mine. She's read some James Thurber. We both love Shirley Jackson. So we've found some different stories that fit the guidelines. Bart has read a couple of O. Henry's, who is another favorite of mine. So it's always fun to see what people are going to come out with. And Pam today just said she was looking for short stories that had interesting titles, and she found one. And so that's how Maine to the Rescue, I think it was called. And so I guess it's, looking and sort of hoping one will drop in our laps, but mostly going with starting with ones we know.
Well, I think it's really interesting for the time that you have all been doing this, that none of you have come with the same,
That's
so
right.
I think that's really interesting, and I think it speaks to your, the people that are part of this merry band of readers, I call you. That the depths that you all have, the differences too, that you all have, and how you pick and when you're going to read, and there might be a common theme, but it's not the same.
Right.
Yeah. Which
Everybody
is
finds
really
something
interesting.
different. I was going to say, right around Christmas, we had a few people saying, "Oh, I'd like to read this," and someone said, "Oh, I'd like to read that too." And so that's usually the only time, because of course Christmas has classics that everybody thinks of, like The Gift of the Magi or something like that. And Steve has, and Cynthia too, has read some of their own original work. Oh, and I did too.
You did too. Yes.
Yes. The Christmas menorah. I was going,
That's right.
Somebody else did too.
The one I couldn't quite get on all of the social media.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't here for it.
But that was a wonderful
and I had to,
piece. That was a wonderful piece.
Thank
So,
you.
We usually will wrap up our session with some quick,
Oh, boy.
rapid fire questions. So these are really hard too.
Oh, yes,
So
I can
you
imagine.
game for that?
Yes, I always think to myself when I see it on a radio or hear it on a radio program or something like that, I think they had to have given them these questions beforehand, but you didn't. So
We did
these
not.
really
We
are
did
off
not.
the top
Yeah,
of my head.
Definitely.
Okay.
Favorite flavor ice cream?
Peppermint.
Favorite movie?
Dr. Zhivago.
Oh, I love that one.
I know.
I love that one too. Do you have a favorite color?
Green.
Green. Favorite book?
Oh,
That's the stumper
that's
for everybody.
so hard. So hard.
Today. How about
Today,
that?
how about All Over But the Shoutin'? Because I
Okay.
read from that today, and it is one of my favorites. It's a wonderful book by Rick Bragg.
Rick Bragg,
Yeah,
yeah.
memoir.
Favorite restaurant? Doesn't have to be around here, but
The Berghoff in Chicago.
Okay.
It's an old German restaurant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What is the coolest place you've ever been?
Coolest? Like, not
temperature.
temperature-wise, but really cool.
Yeah, because you were in Minnesota.
Yeah. Coolest place. I want to either Bryce Canyon or Paris.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
So, and so that sort of ties into your favorite vacation spot, maybe?
Yes.
That's kind of a
yes.
back-to-back.
Yeah, that's hard. When I was a little girl, I will tell you that Nantucket in the 60s, that is what actually got me interested in the whole flavor of New England.
Wow.
And I have never been so enchanted with a place as I was when I came to Nantucket in the 60s as a little girl. So I'm going to say that, but
Okay.
I'd have to say in the 60s.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's probably very different now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now, if somebody were coming to the area, because you've been here for a while, what would you say would be a good thing to do for an afternoon? So a family's coming into town, they're looking for something to do, either or
Yeah, whatever the
rain
weather.
yeah, exactly. Yep.
Well, if they have little children, I'm a big fan of the Trolley Museum.
Okay.
And my little grandsons, we went there every week. In fact, Bowden had his birthday there twice.
Oh.
So I think that's really fun. I mean, for little children or any age. But I just think that, of course, going to the beach or going on New England Eco Adventures or Ragosa would be a great way to spend the day.
And people don't think about that. So that's, good to know.
It's a way to get on the water.
Yep.
And goodness, when I have gone out, well, with Ragosa, they take you out on a lobster touring boat. So they pull up the lobsters and no, they don't. You don't get to keep the lobsters. They get thrown back in, but they teach you everything there is to know about lobsters. And then on New England Eco Adventures, they're so much fun. That boat can go so fast. And when I've been out, I have seen lots of whales and hundreds of seals. They'll take you to those places. So I would say, before the Trolley Museum, go on one of those boats.
Oh, that's great. That is so
Yeah.
good to know. You know, I haven't done any of that.
Oh, it's fun.
I have yet to get on a lobster boat. I would love to do that sometime. And I know it's about getting up early in the morning. My dad he was a helper on a boat after he retired from the post office. And the boat that he worked on was called the Mary Lou, which is really kind of funny.
And it
Total
wasn't because
coincidence.
not
just
because
a
of
coincidence.
me.
Exactly. But he said you really need to have because I'm a little bit motion sickness. So you have to really be careful of, something like that. I said, okay, maybe I won't go on a lobster, but I'll just go for a ride.
Yes.
So,
that's the thing to do.
Anyway.
And ordinarily, I know that Bob on Ragosa would not take people out if it was going to make them sick. They'd have bands to give people and all of that, but nevertheless, he never wants to give people a bad trip. Right. And I'm sure my son Matthew is the same.
Yeah.
And so normally they take that out of your hands. But the other part that's difficult about that is it might be a gorgeous day and people don't understand why are they canceling the trip. It's because the sea is too big and dangerous and choppy. So, but,
yeah, and you don't want to be out there when it's dangerous and choppy.
Right. You want a nice calm day.
Yeah, exactly. So we want to make sure that people know about the Portside Readers again. It is such a lovely group. We appreciate all you do for that. And thank you for being here in the area and encouraging students to express themselves, sing, act, whatever it is they're doing. And, don't think that we don't think about you after we're graduated, because it really does. It lasts forever.
It lasts forever. It's the truth. And I remember one young man writing, and he only had like a walk-on part in some play. And on the card that they all sign afterwards, he said, that was the best time in my life. And it was like, it's because you're part of a community.
Exactly.
That you're part of a group who's working together to do something really special, magical, and beautiful.
Well, and I think you make it easy for that to happen, because you are special and magical and beautiful. So
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you all for being with us tonight. And we will see you back here on What's Your Story next time.